Hello, and welcome to Conservation Skills in 10 Minutes or Less. This series of short, skill-based videos is brought to you by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. If you have a few minutes, pull up a chair and pick up a new conservation skill or refresh an old one on topics ranging from fish culture to bird identification to stream restoration. Enjoy. Hello, my name is Matthew Patterson and I'm a course leader at the National Conservation Training Center. I'm not going to lead you through the skill exercise today, but I would like to introduce you to the topic. So what is the topic for today? Today we're talking about writing skills for conservation. So why are writing skills important for the conservation of wildlife? Now, if you're a biologist in the field working on a species of concern like alligator gar, or federally endangered freshwater mussels, or the endangered Texas wild rice, you really care about the welfare of those species. And it's important for the conservation of those species that you be able to communicate clearly with the various stakeholders and interested parties in that species. In fact, the best way to be an advocate for your species and resources is to write clearly, concisely, and objectively, and to construct sound, logical, and defensible arguments. So, good writing skills matter. They allow us to engage our audiences and communicate a very clear message about the species that we're interested in. This allows us to avoid confusion, ensure consistency, and maintain credibility, both of you as a scientist and the agency. And in the end, if we have good writing skills, we can positively affect the resources we care about and advocate for. So, stay tuned for a series of videos that will walk you through how to develop good writing skills.
One of the fastest ways to make your writing clear and concise is to use the active voice. According to the federal government's plain language guidelines, you should write in the active voice whenever possible. Do the plain language guidelines mean you have to write everything in active voice? No. In fact, in some instances, writing a sentence in passive voice is okay. We'll discuss that later in the video. But first, you need to understand the difference between active and passive voice. In a sentence written in active voice, the actor or subject comes before the action or verb. For example, young Chinook salmon eat insects and small crustaceans. The action that is being performed, or the verb in the sentence, is eat. The subject of the sentence, or the actor who's performing the action, is young Chinook salmon. You can see that this is an active sentence because it leads with the subject, young Chinook salmon, then the verb, eat. Next comes the object of the sentence. The object receives the action. In this sentence, the object is insects and small crustaceans. They're all receiving the action of being eaten. Why do the plain language guidelines want you to write in active voice? Sentences using active voice have a lot of momentum and they breathe life into your writing. Because they're constructed with the subject first, then verb, then object, they're easy for the reader to understand and process. And since active voice emphasizes the subject, there's no question of who's doing the action. If we wrote the same sentence in the passive voice, it would look like this. Insects and small crustaceans are eaten by young Chinook salmon. The sentence starts with the object, the receiver of the action, rather than the subject who's initiating the action. This backward construction not only slows the reader down, but changes what's being emphasized. Sometimes sentences written in passive voice leave out who's performing the action altogether. Insects and small crustaceans are eaten. Passive voice can kind of hide who's responsible for the action. We really don't know who's eating all this stuff. When is passive voice helpful? It can be helpful if you don't want to emphasize who's doing the action, as in this sentence, mistakes were made. Or you don't know who performed the action, my laptop was stolen. Or who performed the action is obvious or irrelevant. Monarchs have been one of the most studied butterflies in the last decade. Another reason to use passive voice is if the action or the receiver of the action is more important than the performer of the action. Let's look at these two sentences. This one in active voice. Matthew Patterson, NCTC course leader, captured the Loch Ness Monster last week. Or this one in passive voice. The Loch Ness Monster was captured last week by Matthew Patterson, NCTC course leader. Now, if I was writing this sentence to go across the newswire, I'd choose the one written in passive voice. Why? Because the Loch Ness Monster is who my audience is familiar with, and I'd want to emphasize the monster and not Matthew. Sorry, Matt. However, if Matthew was being lauded by his boss for capturing Nessie, and I was writing an article for the campus newsletter, I might choose the sentence written in active voice because it emphasizes Matthew and puts him center stage. Well done, Matt. If you use passive voice, do so with intent and have a good reason for doing it. Otherwise, write in active voice. It will make your writing clearer and more concise and will delight your reader. Now, as a homework challenge, I'd like you to review a document you've written. Look at each sentence and determine whether they're in active or passive voice. If you find a sentence in passive voice, do you know why you chose to write it that way? Would you keep it in passive voice or rewrite it in active? If you choose to rewrite it, then do it.
If you're interested in learning more about developing good writing skills, the National Conservation Training Center has a series of courses that you might be interested in. And if you want to learn more about these, stay tuned after the episode, and I'll walk you through how to find these courses on the NCTC website. Thanks for joining us for the skill exercise today. If you have questions about this skill series, you can contact Linda Lufkin at the email and phone number below. If you have questions about this series or any other skills related to conservation, you can contact me at the information below. Thank you. Now, as promised, I was going to walk you through how to find these courses on the National Conservation Training Center website. If you go to any search engine and type in National Conservation Training Center, it's usually the first item that pops up. Click the link. And in the search bar, type Communications Catalog and hit search. And right at the very top, you see Communications. Click that link. And then you can see all kinds of courses here. Here's our critical writing, critical thinking, digital communications, business communications. Down here we have writing with clarity. You can click any of these links to find more information about these courses. Thanks. Thanks again for joining us for Conservation Skills in 10 Minutes or Less. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like, hit the subscribe button, share this video with a friend, or check out one of the many other skill-based videos in this series. Have a wonderful day, and always remember, the beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you.